index, boosted by the system chapter 8. 007, realistic phenomenon. Is sperm blood the way to get attribute points? One more. Suze was covered in blood and injuries, but his body straightened, took off the uniform jacket of Sunshine High School, hung it on his arm, and walked into the classroom step by step. Where he walked, there was silence. Walk into the classroom. There is no amount of light, all of them are fear, shock. The classroom was a mess, no one dared to clean up, there were a lot of bloodstains. Suze picked up his satchel. His beautiful face was indifferent, but in the eyes of everyone, but with fierceness, madness, and a kind of cruelty, the path he took. Everyone involuntarily let go, as if what he saw was not a classmate who had been with them for several years, but a stranger who did not know them at all. Get out of campus. Suze was about to leave. But suddenly, ahead, a girl in a sunny college uniform stood on the side of the road, seemingly waiting for her. She is dressed in a sunny college uniform, her hair is slightly curly, and her face is absolutely beautiful, just like what Suze saw in the story of the final class before. But compared to Hua Fulong 10 years later, the girl in front of her has a little more greenness, but the softness in her eyes seems to be born with her own eyebrow bones. The girl in front of you. Naturally, it is Hua Fulong. 18-year-old Flower Fulong. Classmate Su, you are really surprising. Hua Fulong looked at Suze in front of him. His beautiful eyes were full of color, and there was an indescribable curiosity. Thanks for the compliment. Is something wrong? Suze asked calmly. Hua Fulong in front of him was the only one who dared to speak up in the class, and he was also the only one who had spoken for him, so his tone was quite good. Hua Fulong smiled lightly, his eyes were like charm, and gently walked towards Suze. It's okay, but what? I want to remind you, classmate Su, behind this Li Hong, there is an overlord, although this guy is the last one of the 8 college bosses. But he is indeed ranked 45th in the co-list of the mixed generation ranking, and the combat power index is as high as 4,600 points, you have to be careful. And, she walked up to Suze. A fragrant fragrance greets you. She approached slightly and exhaled lightly. This guy has contact with some gangs outside, even our flower family, he is also afraid. Be careful, if it can't be solved, you can come to me. Our flower family wants to keep someone, it's still very simple. She smiled slightly, winked at Suze, and turned to leave here. Suze stood in place, his eyes narrowed slightly. The meaning of this flower is obvious. That is, investment. This Flower Fulong seems to see his potential, so he sends him an olive branch, or rather a favor. Interesting, Suze smiled. If Hua Fulong's voice was spoken for him before, it was because she was not used to it, and at the same time she was kind in her heart, but now the favor given was because of what he did. Saw his potential, provided him with information and shelter. Once he found the flower family, he would naturally owe favors, which is a very realistic phenomenon. But it is also Suze who likes it. Where there is anything suddenly good, the starting point of everything is to be based on the situation of interest. And as far as Suze knows, the power of the Hua family is not weak. 10 years after the golden time and space, Hua Fulong once told Wang Dedong that she knew that Wang Dedong had an extraordinary combat power index. But it was very simple to deal with him with the power of the Hua family. Visible. This golden time and space is not so simple in the plot that was not filmed, just with the information that Suze just knew from Hua Fulong. The bosses of these 8 colleges and universities may all have something to do with the gangs outside, involving many forces in the outside world, not just as simple as told in the final class. The water is very deep. It seems, this world is really not simple. Suze smiled. This is not a TV series, but a real journey here, experiencing the powerlessness, despair, and all kinds of darkness, and the more you know. The more you know that many things are not as simple and beautiful as they seem. Suze shook his head, didn't think much about it, turned away, and then thought of how to deal with the overlord. After all, this is a mixed character of Co.45, with a combat power index of 4,500 points, with his current combat power index of 1,500 points, I am afraid that he is not an opponent at all. Suddenly, he seemed to sense something. Bring up the system panel. The panel data in front of him seems to have changed, especially the energy bar in the body, which has already been more than half. Suze was slightly stunned. He thought back to what had happened today. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. So that's it. His eyes narrowed slightly. According to the system, if you want to get attribute points, you must eat. There are nutritious, big supplements, and the spirit of the human body, that is, the essence blood, is naturally one of the great supplements. Just like the blood sucked by zombies, sucking is the spirit of the human body, which contains the real power of the human body. And when he dealt with the 2 bastards before, Li Hong, he found that the bloodstains disappeared a lot. Originally, it was absorbed by him. So, this is one of the ways to get attribute points. Now flowers 1300. Evaluation votes 451, according to the agreed. 10 more. First update everyone after 7 chapters first tilde. 008. Devil. The guess is correct. 2 more. It's a pity. Thinking of today's events, Suze only felt a little pity. Today, he originally wanted to cut the grass and remove the roots. He has already done this step. If he does not do it, these guys may bring him some trouble later, which Suze does not want to see. But after all, it is in school. It can hurt people, but it cannot die, so he did not kill him. The way this system gets attribute points. It's really wrong. Suze shook his head. Although he is not a kind person, but as he said, he will not attack the weak, let alone bully the weak, of course, provided that they have no hatred. So he cannot absorb the blood of others for no reason. Unless the man was guilty. Well, that's right. Suze nodded, endured the injury, and was about to go home. Inside the hospital, Li Hong and the two mixed characters all live in the same ward. Li Hong broke an arm, and when he was sent to the hospital, the doctor was shocked when he saw this scene, and after trying to take over several times, he completely failed, that is to say. Li Hong's hand was completely wasted. And those two mixed characters, although their hands were treated and barely retained, but I am afraid that it will be very troublesome to even hold the chopsticks in the future. And the other mixed characters, their faces are bandaged into pigs' heads, and their faces are unrecognizable. Miserable. Chapter 1 Previous chapter.